always the middle class wants to get closer to the upper class because they're already enjoying some comforts and they feel that they can get more comforts. Now, so one group of elite says to this group, the middle class, in Islam we don't have upper, middle, lower class. We have only those that give zakat and take zakat. That's the only distinction we have. But to understand it from their terms, the middle class wanting to be always part of the upper class says to the middle class, let me pat your back, you're doing a good job, keep doing what you're doing. Okay? And we will use the trickle-down theory. Anybody know about the trickle-down theory? The way to grow society is, or make society prosperous is to invest in the businesses, invest with the elite, so that the elite will be able to create more jobs for the rest of society. Now there's a whole different group of elitists. They say this. See, they don't have the upper hand. They don't have the upper hand. The upper hand is with the people that are having a certain attitude with the lower people because they're already enjoying the fun. So these two elitist groups are at odds with one another. Sometimes they're on top, sometimes they're on top. The second group is like Obama mania, you can say. The second group of elitists are those people that say we care about the poor. We care what? We care about the poor. And what happens? You know how the Prophet ﷺ said, look to the people that are lower you in dunya and then higher than you in terms of the deen, right? But naturally, when you are invested in dunya, you do the opposite. You naturally look up to the people that are higher in dunya and you ignore or pretend that the lower strata doesn't exist. But then there's a whole group of another elite people. What they do is they speak to the masses. They speak to the poor. And they say, you know what? You deserve a good health care system. Right? You deserve a good welfare system. He will give you dreams of the future. Give you dreams of the future. Something that will never come to be, actually, but just dreams of the future of, you know, we're going to create jobs for you, we're going to give you good health care, and these people, they want big government to take care of the to the miserable people. Why? What is this called when you have big government? It's getting closer to socialism. So there is an elite group that wants to feel good about helping the poor. But the reason that they help the poor is not to help the poor only. But that's the feel-good part. But they want to help the poor to get their sympathies so that they can themselves remain part of the elite. One last thing that Spencer wrote. The state of transition, of course, will be an unhappy state. Meaning what? This transition where you are trying to remove the miserable people of society, you want to get rid of them, it will be what? A state of unhappiness. It'll be a state that you're not happy with. Misery inevitably results from the incongruity between constitution and conditions. All these evils. Over here he's saying evils are what? The miserable people of society. And by the way, in this sense, I want this to be clear. The point I'm trying to raise here is this, is that this mentality to consider the miserable people as bad is mentioned in Quran. And when it is mentioned in Quran, it's not just words. People are actually thinking like this. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Kahf, and you know Surah Al-Kahf is the surah of the modern times, because it has to do with the coming of Dajjal. And in that sense, it is talking very deeply towards the modern mindset. وَضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, give them an example. رَجُلَيْنِ, two men. جَعَلْنَا لِأَحَدِهِمَا جَنَّتَيْنِ. We made for one of them, we gave him how many gardens? 2 gardens. Not one, but 2. مِنْ أَعْنَابٍ وَخَفَفْنَاهُمَا بِالنَّخْلِ. And he had a garden of grapes, and then around the grapes were trees of dates. And between khilaluhuma nahara, and in between this was river. This is like a self-irrigation land. It's irrigating itself. He's done it. He's got it. But what happens to people that become so much favored in the materialistic sense? What happens to their mentality? And so when you're looking at the Muslim world, for example, you're looking at, let's say, the leaders of the Muslim world, whether it be Musharraf or Mubarak or whoever, you have to understand that they can't escape these human realities. And so كان له ثمر فقال لصاحبه وهو يحاوره أنا أكثر منك مالا وعز نفرا. How dare a person say this? He says to his companion, who he considers a friend, لصاحبه. This is the point where people don't realize. He said to his, who? His friend. He considers this guy his friend, and he says what to him? أنا أكثر منك مالا. I am more than you in wealth. وَعَزُّ نَفَرًا, and I have more resources than you do. How dare a person say this to his friend? But it's so natural. It's so natural. I have more wealth than you. I'm better than you. Isn't it obvious? Isn't it obvious? أَنَا أَكْثَرَ مِنْكَ مَالًا وَعَزُّ نَفَرًا. I have more wealth than you. I feel sorry for you. And then وَدَخَلَ جَنَّتَهُ وَهُوَ ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ, and he enters his garden. He was doing dhulm. He was doing like shirk. The dhulm, إِنَّ الشِّرْكَ لَظُلْمٌ عَظِيمٌ. قَالَ مَا أَظُنُّ أَن تَبِيدَ هَذِهِ أَبَدًا. He said, I don't think ever this garden will perish. Look at this garden. It's constructed so well. مَا أَظُنُّ أَن تَبِيدَ هَذِهِ أَبَدًا. He started to believe in the permanency of his resources and what he has. وَمَا أَظُنُّ السَّاعَةَ قَائِمَةً. And I don't think there's any day of judgment. Why should he believe in the day of judgment? What benefit does he have in believing in the day of judgment? He would have to give his wealth away to the poor people, and why should he do that when he's struggled so hard to make this Jannah, this garden? وَلَئِنْ أُرِدْتُ إِلَىٰ رَبِّي. And even if there is a day of judgment and I do go back to Allah, even if I go back to Allah, وَإِنْ أُرِدْتُ إِلَىٰ رَبِّي لَأَجِدَنَّ خَيْرًا مِنْهَا مُنْقَلَبًا. I will definitely find something better with Allah than what I have here. See, when you read this, you're thinking, okay, how can somebody think like this? How can somebody think so materialistically that he thinks that because he's endowed with favors in this life, he will be better off in the next life? And I'm telling you that this thinking is there in books. People like Spencer, in books like the Protestant Ethics. This thought is there amongst the elites of society. They actually think like this. And when they make policies with this as part of their subconscious reality. When they make policies, this is part of their reality of how they see the world around them. قَالَ لَهُ صَاحِبُهُ وَهُوَ يُحَاوِرُهُ. And his friend said to him, who was going around the garden with him, he's counter-arguing with him. He says, and these are the two things, two different worlds. Right? Two different worlds, two different ways of looking at the world. And this man who was his friend, who was going around the garden, أَكَفَرْتَ بِالَّذِي خَلَقَكَ مِن تُرَابٍ. He says, do you do kufr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And he continues. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroys his garden. And we know this. And this is exactly the nature of the elite. We live in a world where the elite changes its face very, very quickly.